Hello, and welcome to the Vlogging Pod. Across the world, headlines today seem scattered. One story talks about war with Iran and oil tankers slipping through the Strait of Hormuz to keep global supply moving. Another warns that countries like Japan are refusing to send naval escorts into the region. Another describes escalating violence stretching from Iran to Lebanon and Ukraine. And here at home in the United States, a separate headline reports thousands of workers walking off the job at one of the nation's largest meatpacking plants. At first glance, these stories appear unrelated. But when you step back and look at them together, a larger picture begins to form. This may not just be a war unfolding overseas. It may be a moment where global conflict, energy markets, political power, and everyday costs for Americans are all colliding at once. The center of the entire situation sits in a narrow waterway halfway around the world called the Strait of Hormuz. It is one of the most important shipping lanes on Earth. Roughly one-fifth of the world's oil passes through the narrow channel between Iran and Arabian Peninsula. When tensions rise there, the ripple effect is immediate. Tanker traffic slows, insurance costs for ships surge, markets react, oil prices jump. And when oil prices jump, gasoline, transportation, food distribution, and manufacturing costs begin to climb as well. This is why one of the most striking developments in the headlines involves a statement that the United States is allowing certain Iranian oil tankers to continue moving through the Strait of Hormuz to help maintain global supply. Even while military tensions are rising, the global economy cannot afford to completely shut down the passage. The world's energy system is so tightly linked to that waterway that any disruption threatens supply chains far beyond the Middle East. At the same time, the international response has been far from unified. Japan has said it has no plans to send naval vessels to escort ships through the region. European leaders have issued warnings about the danger of normalizing constant war. Other governments have signaled hesitation about becoming directly involved. In other words, while the United States remains deeply engaged in the conflict, many allies appear cautious about being pulled into another major regional war. Meanwhile, the conflict itself continues to expand across the region. Israel forces have launched ground operations in Lebanon. Iran and allied groups have carried out retaliatory strikes. Drone and missile attacks have targeted infrastructures and military positions across multiple countries. Each new strike increases the risk that what began as a confrontation between a few players could spiral into a much wider regional conflict. But the consequences are not only being felt overseas. Here at home, another headline tells a different story about pressure building with the American colony. Thousands of workers at one of the nation's largest meat packing plants have gone on strike. When a plant that large stops operating, the effects can ripple through the food supply chain. Meat processing slows, distribution tightens, prices can rise. Combine that with the rising energy costs, and the results can be higher grocery bills for everyday Americans. So, while global leaders debate military strategy and oil shipping lanes, families back home may begin to feel the impact through something much simpler. The cost of filling a tank of gas, the price of food in the grocery store, the stability of jobs tied to industries already under pressure. And then there is another set of headlines raising uncomfortable questions about who's benefiting when conflicts expand. Reports and commentaries circulating online to point enormous financial networks surrounding geopolitical power, including claims about billions of dollars flowing through investment funds connected to figures close to the administration. One such figure frequently mentioned in these discussions is Jared Kushner, whose post-government investment fund has reportedly received billions from foreign sovereign wealth funds. Critics argue that moments of geopolitical instability can sometimes create opportunities for massive financial gain among those positioned close to power. Whether those claims ultimately prove accurate or not, the perception itself adds another layer of public frustration, especially when at the same time some families of American soldiers killed in overseas conflict have turned to community fundraising efforts like GoFundMe to support basic expenses after losing a loved one. For many Americans, the contrast between those realities can feel stark. On one side, our families navigating grief and financial uncertainty. On the other are reports of enormous financial investments circulating among political elites. All of these headlines together create a moment that feels larger than any single story. A widening conflict in the Middle East, a fragile global oil supply chain, international allies hesitant to deepen their involvement, domestic political tensions over Congress should hold hearings on the war, economic pressure building at home through strikes and rising prices, and questions about who ultimately profits from the machinery of war. When viewed individually, each headline tells only a small piece of the story, but when placed side by side, they begin to reveal something much bigger. A war that is not only about missiles, military strategy, or diplomatic negotiations, it's also about energy, markets, global alliance, political power, and everyday economic pressures felt by people thousands of miles away from the battlefield. And that is the war behind the headlines. Today's sources come from the Associated Press. Oil markets react as Middle East tensions threaten global routes. U.S. allowing some ships through the Strait of Hormuz to maintain supplies, Reuters. France 24, Israel launches ground incursion into Lebanon as regional tensions escalate. Associated Press, thousands of workers strike at one of the nation's largest meatpacking plants. Newsweek, allies weigh responses as tension rise around the Strait of Hormuz. Thank you for listening. Until the next time, bye-bye for now.